Hi, this is Matt Weiner, and I'm the creator and executive producer of Mad Men. And this is the pilot episode. And the script had been around for 5 years, actually. It was my writing sample. I didn't write it as a writing sample, I wrote it to be a show, but I had fought for a long time to make it happen. And it finally happened, and we had this amazing experience of casting these people. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how the pilot was put together, but pretty much the script you're seeing is what I had written originally 5 years ago. I'll point out the things that are different. This was on the title page of the script. This little joke sort of tells you who they are and why the title is what it is. And this is the Lenox Lounge in Harlem. This is a combination of many, many people's work right here, and it really set the tone for the show. And Alan Taylor, as a director, is obsessed with the back of people's heads and did an amazing job of bringing us into a curiosity about who this man is. What I want to establish here is a couple of things. One is that this man, whoever he is always working. And I wanted immediately to discuss the reality of human relations, not necessarily the political aspects of race relations, but in the script it said that the busboy was too old for his tight jacket and that he was in his 50s. And John Dunn gave me his tight jacket, and there's a combination of so many things right here. That piece of gold cloth that's up against the wall there, Bob Shaw put in there, the production designer. It just created this aura of color while still having this dingy, dark thing. And we start getting insight into our character right here. The first thing we know is that he talks to this man, even though it's not appropriate. He sort of stands up for him. And then he sort of amusingly is probing this man to ask about smoking, and we know he's working on something, obviously. But every aspect of this scene was really gone over. I mean, this is the first time we see our character. We're in a Art Deco environment, which is not 1960, but I wanted to establish that everything that existed before 1960 still existed. And I wanted to have this feeling of sort of fun and camaraderie. These two men can bond on the fact that they both think very little of women, even though there's this race issue. And this was a slow motion shot. I think this was Phil Abraham's idea, and it basically, what it was in the script was that Don was sort of watching these people smoking, but it also was about other people having a good time while he's working. And here's the mystery. Where is he going? He looks at his watch. We know it's late. And here's the introduction of this woman, Midge. This was the last part that we cast. It was very hard to find someone, and a lot of people who were on the show actually read for this part. It's very hard to find someone who could express this confidence and sexuality and not make us think she was a prostitute. And Rosemarie just had this great confidence. Sexual confidence, human confidence. And she also, there was a talking aspect to what the dialogue was going to sound like, because it is elevated. It is written a little bit more, I don't know how to say it, a little bit more clever than people speak. And there's a tendency to want to rip through it and make it sort of bump, and not that the sweet smell of success is anything to shy away from, but I wanted it to sound like real people. And she had this amazing natural quality, this walk over to the record player. And then you have Don here in this amazing space. This is not a set. This is the 14th floor of a building on 57th Street in New York that was an artist loft. Artist studio, excuse me. And you get the character's problem right away, the admission of weakness. And you also hear this woman say that it's possible that someone else would have been there. So yes, this is a midnight booty call, but it's a little bit more complicated. And she's smart, and they talk about ideas, and she's sarcastic and dry about it, but I love this shot, the way he comes over here towards the camera. And this, of course, is the morning, this was shot first, as we waited for it to get dark for the rest of it, and there's this wonderful blue light and the smoke, and there's Dawn laying on her chest, which I remember trying to do in a script on another show or in a movie, and someone saying the man doesn't lay on the woman's chest, it's the other way around. And I guess from personal experience or something about who this character is, I thought he could stand up for it, and it just felt so romantic to me. And then she says, I don't make plans and I don't make breakfast. She says, I'm not attached to anyone. He's still got his problem. And I love this too, because this is all being able to be shown on TV, I guess, except for the smoking. But there's a naturalness to the way they deal with their bodies, the way he puts his shirt on, his physique is not, I mean, he's obviously an amazing looking man, but it's not all modelly looking. And this was in the script. They added the move to it, but this was a solution for how to cheaply show period without having to dress all these streets. And it's a very memorable image. And then Alan had this idea about them coming through the door. We grabbed that, which I love that. Now here we are in the elevator, and we see these men hitting on this woman. We don't know any of these people, but we get a little bit of story that they're going to a bachelor party and that they're hitting on this woman. Black elevator operator. There's no pretending, as there is in these movies, that people don't smoke and that the whole world is integrated. It wasn't. They're parallel universes. It's one of the themes of the show. I love this shot. This was a practical location. The lighting was an issue. How to shoot in these fluorescent lights and not make it look horrible. Pete's secretary, Hildy, who eventually became a real good part of the show, I just loved her instant expression of dismissal for them. And we get Pete on the phone with his wife, or his fiance. And he says what I think is the defining moment of his character. I'm giving up my life to be with you, aren't I? That's a real background back there. And Vincent came in. He's traditionally played a lot of like long hair drifter drug addicts. But he like most of the cast, he's from the Midwest, and there's a formality to him that I loved. It was natural. That is, we hadn't cast Trudy yet, so that is a picture of my mother. This shot was really establishing the style of the show. This is Alan Taylor, foreground, background. You really see the whole set. And of course, they're walking around in circles because it's really not that big. And the introduction of Joan, who this scene I always thought was, she's a courtesan. You know, she's bringing a young girl into the harem. I did not imagine this character being this way. I thought she would just be a funny foil and kind of like a Eve Arden type. And then Christina came in and read it, and there was so much character there. And here she gives her the instructions of what to do. It's a very long monologue, and it takes us through that amazing set. You can see the appointments of the set are established as these pieces in the middle of the room, and the desks, and we didn't go for anything obvious. There's no steel case desks. It could be right now. That was one of the watchwords, is don't make people have to abstract too much into that world. That's why it's in color. And this is a riff on something that Helen Gurley Brown wrote about how to there's a Peggy character moment, how to evaluate yourself. She'd heard that. So no matter what you're doing, no matter what your skills are, it's really about your physique. This always gets a laugh. And of course, the typewriters became a sore spot because they're not period correct. But we knew that at the time, and we couldn't find enough of the other ones, and they had carriages that moved, and they didn't work, and this allowed us to solve the sound problem, which is that you can't see it moving. And they came out within 11 months of when the pilot took place. And there's Joan greeting the men. Now we have the men's world, and she's so pleased to see everyone. And they don't exist. John Slattery, what a lucky thing to get him in the show. He really is just such a long-time respected stage actor and film actor. And he comes in and just projects this amazing confidence that I am your boss, not your friend, but I'm going to act like your friend. And of course, this was the first shot we shot of the entire thing, and John Hamm is amazing. The amount of business in this, and business is what we call what actors do during a scene that is not talking. It's all scripted in, and taking the shirts out of the drawer, which I wanted to see in there. There was some resistance from both the director and the editor to show this drawer, but I realized that I wanted to create this reality for the world and that everything would be full. The suitcases, the pockets, people have lighters in their pockets. No one could carry their phone around. There's the first sort of glib anti-Semitic remark to establish the fact that, yes, this is a white firm. But anyway, if you watch this, John has put his shirt on while they've been talking, buttoned it, missed a button actually deliberately, and he got that. This is Alan's idea. I love this shot, and I love the sound of it. It's a great time transition. Seeing the Alka-Seltzer, it takes you back. Anyway, John did all of that stuff at once while he was talking, and he did it about 20 times. It was amazing. We know he has a problem because he's been talking to Midge about it, and he talked to the man in the bar about it. This is something that I added because I knew that the story was going to be about, his identity. I also wanted people to know he was a veteran because these men were, and it's a different perspective for us. See a man that young who's been in the war, but the network said, you've got to put something in there to tell that story, so I threw that in there with this very old joke about the the exercise belt while you're smoking. Now, Bryan Batt came in to read. There was every variety of person who came in to read for Salvatore of different tones, and he's just so natural and such a real person. He's got such a mischievous sense of humor, and I like the idea that he and Don seem like they're friends, and of course his what appears to be his closeted homosexuality is the source of most of the humor in this. He tells this thing about his neighbor there. He tells a thing about his neighbor, and you realize that he's in a reverie. I told him that about what a great day that was, drawing his neighbor. Don dismisses his information. And that was an issue, too. Like, what did Don do? I wanted to make sure that people knew Don was a writer. And here, this was a real crisis in advertising. Not a crisis, but a movement that advertising had been brought in, and there were a lot of people who had actually studied with Freud and Adler who had come to the United States and become a crucial part of the advertising industry. And this was a place for women also. And this theory that she espouses, this woman is a wonderful actress. Gordana is her name, and she's this accent is fake, but I loved it. I'm very resistant to those things. There's a little bit of irony. There's a lot of irony in this episode about things that we know now that we didn't know then. It was something that really lets you know that that's sort of what the show is doing. Some of it is jokey, but it establishes a kind of I don't know if it's a superiority or intelligence in the audience, but there's an understanding of like why we're telling it in this period. And there's that line right there where he says, talks about repression. And Don, as an ad man, is not a psychologist. Or he is, but he doesn't believe it's a science. It's common sense. And this is a profound idea in advertising. It's not whether people should smoke, it's whether people should smoke Lucky Strikes. And this becomes actually the solution to the advertising problem in the show. And what she's telling him is something that really did come up at this point. It had come up earlier, But the tobacco industry was trying to figure out how to deal with the fact that now it was becoming common knowledge and common parlance that even though people referred to these as coffin nails for a long time, that cigarettes were being linked to disease. And he throws that report in the garbage. It's an act of total dominance, confidence, and of course, the perfect garbage pail picked out there. I love that. Don's desk seems small, but there's something about this corner office that you know that he's a powerful person, although not in charge. This dissolve was an issue with the editor originally. We were talking about it. It said it felt old-fashioned, but I wanted that. Now, this was added from the original script, this fly. And I knew Don was going to take a nap, which is a funny thing to do in your show, is have your hero take a nap 15 minutes into the movie, but he's a writer. And I wanted to show that that ceiling was real. And I guess it becomes symbolic that he's trapped in there somehow. But it's also and I love this light change, so we know he's been asleep for a while. There's a sound effect in here of some bombs going off. And what I think is one of my favorite things here when they actually meet, this point of view shot. And that Don is worried about Pete Campbell. And he has no idea who she is, even after he's asked her to lie for him. And she shows a little character here. She already doesn't like him, and Don doesn't either. And she's already taking Joan's advice. She's doing what she's told. This ponytail and these bangs were, Jeffrey Ribello showed me some pictures, and Elisabeth was game for it, and it's just instant character. This scene, Pete dressing her down, really explains the dynamic, and that Don defends her. And of course, it was in the script that she was wearing this dress that people kept talking about how dated it was. And John Dunn brought this sweater and this skirt in, and he said it will do the same thing, and it allows us to make it not ridiculous. And of course, he comes in and says, "You look like $100," so you know he's listening to Roger all the time. Pete's shrug. That Vincent did that in the audition. And this is they were supposed to be walking and talking. I wrote it before The West Wing, actually. I didn't want it to feel like that. I wanted to feel like they were talking to each other, and I made a rule that people had to be looking at each other and had to be within earshot. And then there's this shocking comment, this joke about her taking down more men than the Arizona, which just seems so profane. The Arizona basically being, the 9/11 of its era, but people did make fun of those things the way they do now. This scene expresses Don's sophistication and dominance of this business. And actually, it was hard because this was in the audition, and I will be honest with you that every single person who read this scene nailed it. And I couldn't really judge. And John was hired because of the way he handled everything else. I mean, he obviously did this great too. Here we have our boardroom, and we're sort of, and this is a joke, of course, that also establishes character. He's introduced, and he reaches for the man's hand. Maggie, to me, was the person for this role from the first audition. She's so strong. She auditioned a lot. We had a lot of process, actually, and mostly Alan and I working it out more than the network. They were pretty much on board. They had trepidation about John, but that was really about how much was resting on his shoulders. And they wanted to make sure he was the right person. These ads in the background are derived from pretty famous ads of the period. There's that Bob Shaw did them. There's an amazing script. And then there's the joke, that Don has mistaken her. The client couldn't possibly be a woman. And she says, "My father thought that too," which I love. Here's an exterior that opens the show up, and we don't know where we are. It's your wedding night. That was a reproduction of a real pamphlet. We know Peggy's at the doctor. This is Remy Bourgeois, and I will be honest with you, I had a fantasy in my mind that I was going to play this character. I'm not a trained actor, and when this man came in and actually, you know what? He read for another part and ended up reading this at the table because the man who was supposed to play it couldn't make it, and we ended up just shifting everything around. He was amazing. At the table, I mean at the, the reading that you do before you shoot it. This, to me, is the definition of the show, this scene. It's not essential to the story. It's told from this character's point of view. And there's this incredible, I mean, it's a little heavier handed than we do things, but there's this incredible mixed attitude, which typifies the time and our time too, where this doctor is both flirting with her and judging her at the same time. And of course, the idea that she's coming for the pill is something we don't associate at all with this time. And there's a tension because people don't know how much we're going to show and how uncomfortable it's going to get. And here it becomes very paternalistic. And a moment of Peggy shutting this out the way you would, and also letting the audience know that exactly what day it is. It's March 1960. And she behaves as she's supposed to. And then he makes some sort of sly remark about Joan. Again, they had just become available. But there he is. Excuse my French, he's still a gentleman. I just love what he did. So we come back to this pitch, which is really run-of-the-mill for them. It's just business as usual. I didn't want to make it into some gigantic high-stakes thing. Of course, we do that later. She's not interested in hearing this. We know she's Jewish, and we know she's a woman, and she's modern. And I also love the fact, we talked to John, she's in a Chanel suit. I said, I wonder one of those things that you see older women, wearing at weddings and things. And when I want to see it like on a young and sexy person, so you know it was the style of the time. And that is my own insinuation. The same village. There's all kinds of veiled comments. And her strategy is not ridiculous at all. The shrimp. And this is really our first entrance into Dawn here. This woman is speaking her mind. Maybe if she was older, she could have gotten away with talking this way. But a contemporary woman telling him how to do his job, this is his character. And Pete, of course, defined by the fact that he does not think before he speaks. Great reaction. And that was in the script too, of putting the cigarette out in the shrimp cocktail. That line actually was the first line I had of the pilot. I'm not going to let a woman talk to me like this. I remember people saying that, even in the 80s. There's a little joke. David Cohen has gotten too comfortable. This line also is something I overheard, which is adding money and education doesn't take the root edge out of people as an anti-Semitic slur. I love this shot. This was Alan playing with what you can see and what you can't. And I love this as a turn that Pete is kissing up to him and saying that we don't compete with each other. We work together, which is great because they are competing. And then Don relents. We hear this line that was added: I'd follow you into battle. Pete's generation. And this was there from the beginning, that he would offer his hand and Don would not shake it. And then the only swearing that was ever in the pilot was him saying, fuck you, as he walked away, which we pulled down, but you definitely got it. All we know about Don's previous secretary is that he did not get along with her. This is another piece of evidence that they give Peggy on how to behave. This is a big joke, that this is the nerve center. It's just like the technology joke about the typewriter. This was technology. But these were the gatekeepers for the agency. And these three women are fantastic. In fact, Kristen Shaw, we couldn't get back out because we shot in L.A. Stephanie Courtney's been a part of the show since then, and Zandy was terrific too. She's in New York. And everything stops because they have the power. And this totally ritualized gesture of making a gift to the women who control your future. So what she's hearing is that Mr. Draper was not romantically interested, is what you get there. That's Joan's assessment. And then they are tearing her apart again the way Pete did. And I love this, what Elisabeth does as she's exiting, that willing head shake. Here we are. John Cullum, what a get this was. And when we got him in for one day, and I was just like, is there anyone else? Everyone on the show auditioned, by the way, no matter how famous they were, no matter how big they were. I just made it a policy that I didn't want British actors playing Americans, which everybody wasn't happy about because we had some famous people interested. And because I'm sensitive to those accents, and I thought this was so American, it should be played by Americans. And then to have John Cullum come in and read for this, he's a legend, and he just added so much. It's integrity. Of course, that big cough in there is something that I love too. We never see people coughing. It's a hard joke, but they pull it off very subtly. And let's not underrate Alan Taylor here also, and in the fact that shooting these table scenes like this and having these raking shots, this is a style that he does. And it really creates depth, and there's multiple things to look at. And then as Don becomes isolated, it's tremendous. And I also love the fact here, I'm proud of the fact that Don actually is failing. He has nothing. And I let it go on a long time here. He's vamping, and John was good at that. This is the scene that he auditioned with. He was amazing in it, at admitting the weakness, at seeing it. And one of my friends in advertising told me after this, he said, I've been both of these guys in this meeting. The young guy who thinks he's going to save it, and the guy who comes in with nothing. And this speech I'm very proud of. It is classic advertising logic. It's all implied. And of course, this death wish was a truly viable advertising campaign. It was what was used. Marlboro started off with a tattoo, but the idea was it was manliness. And believe me, that manliness thing came along right when the health claims disappeared. This amorphous Marlboro country. But the client doesn't like that. He doesn't want to hang anything on that. And I love that Pete stands up. I love this shot here. You know that it's extra bad, that Pete's failing. You have to tell the audience these things. They don't know about advertising. This idea sounds great, but all you know is that Pete's failing. Darren Petty, who plays his son here, is tremendous, too. It's gone badly. And that statement is the definition of a kind of advertising. And there's a moment here where Don absorbs that, and David Carbonara gave me this amazing, I don't know if it's a Vietnamese flute or something, there's some music in there that tells us that Don's had an idea. And the way he does this monologue, he did it well in the auditions, but there was just a moment in here, and luckily we were filming, where the whole character clicked in. And John knew it. John knew he was that guy. There was no selling going on. This was about a man revealing himself. I mean, there's some wisdom here, but it's about a man selling himself. Cereal. I love that because that's what it is. It's a product that doesn't necessarily have a lot of intrinsic benefits. Here's the generational thing. It becomes a big part of the show. The new generation is not interested. And this was always a chalkboard. They got the perfect chalkboard. It's toasted as a slogan from long before this. But when I was writing the pilot, I realized that it was the perfect example of a sort of vague, colorless benefit that explains how good Don is at what he does. And this is a man who is being honest. It doesn't feel like selling. It feels like an observation. And this philosophy of advertising to me is also about the period. And Don, it was in the parenthetical, and then it says, "You are okay." It said almost to himself. And part of that was about him surviving the pitch. And there he is. He made it. That little finger thing in the ice cube, I love it. Quiet celebration, cigars. And I love this. Roger says, "You're looking the wrong way." Now, this Nixon thing was added also. I knew I wanted to do the Nixon campaign if the show went. Now, you realize when you're making the pilot, you don't know if there's going to be more show. So you're really just trying to throw everything in there to tell that story. But there was some optimism about it at this point. So I had this joke we put in for Roger to suggest that the campaign was up. And here are the young fellas coming in. They bring him a bottle. They're celebrating, and Pete has to come in and act like nothing happened. And Don, that look over the glass as the mid-level camaraderie begins. Another period thing there, $3 million. That's a lot. They're ordering Peggy around. These men are not defined yet, but they were such good actors, and they were hired based on their face. They all kind of came to read for Pete. And they all were so good. It was just easy to put him in there and worry about it later. I'll catch you next time. The ambiguity of that. Next wedding? What does that mean? Don doesn't party with them, that's for sure. And he doesn't let it go. And Pete doesn't let it go either. I love that he doesn't weasel out of it. He says, "I think she's right." And he does. The magic machine that makes copies of things. That's what I'm talking about. I didn't do much more of that after this, although it's such an amazing joke, I would do it again. Now here's Peggy taking every piece of information that she was given the entire day about how to deal with him and what her job is, and acting on it. And Elizabeth is just, Elizabeth was the first person to read for this part, and she came in and the tear dropped down her face when she said, I hope you don't think I'm the kind of girl. And Don's very hard on her here. And he's showing that same integrity he showed with the busboy. He has rules. He's a Boy Scout. She was fooled. She says that. And he's really assessing her. And that line, a lot of actresses didn't even understand that. I hope you don't think I'm the kind of girl. And of course he tells her to put her curlers in. He is what he is. He's quite consistent to it. He's not
I need you to place a call.
the modern good guy. He is of his time, but he has a code. Now, this, again, was a big period issue. Some of this is an homage to a movie that I love called La Bonne Femme. That's what that shot is of the beaded curtain. And we used it because there weren't many American movies from this period that were shot outside. They were all very stylized. So we used this French New Wave movie to see what the clothing looked like. And of course, the strip club was basically to give us the psychology of these men. I had to tell the men that they didn't pull their ties down, they pulled them up when women were around. And we see the sort of glamorous, even if it's, I mean, I've said it, I cast these men because they reek of young men trying to act like adults. Salvatore lets that slip. And this is Ruby Valentine, and finding even the right stripper and the right body type and someone who could do this, she was just perfect. I didn't want some, you know, I don't know how to say it, I wanted that body type. I wanted her to look like a real woman. And here's Pete showing his lack of character in another way. He scares her away with his aggressiveness. He's so inappropriate, but I don't know, a little date rape went along perfectly with this young frat boy character that we created. I just felt he was so frustrated. These costumes, too, I was like, I didn't want it to be kitsch, but they're amazing on the waitresses. And you see the use of color here, and here's their bravado. And, of course, the song, Shangri-La, the organ song, Shangri-La, it's just something fantastic. The whole vibe in there. We shot this at a sort of retrofitted strip club in the Lower East Side, New York, that's really has a lot of character in itself. And we know that Pete, it's not going well. And here's the elegance of another evening. This is also the Lenox Lounge. It's another half of it. Those doors are the doors we passed through at the opening of the show. But Bob Shaw did an amazing job of making it feel like El Morocco or somewhere else. That gentleman is our first AD, Mark McGann, who came in to play the role of old waiter, and he wanted me to change it to just waiter. That drink, the Mai Tai, her hair. She was someone who was, she's the only person I think who has a costume change in the show. Because it takes place in one day. And that was because I'd had her hair done. And I said, she's rich and she owns a department store and she's elegant. And this scene was really everything. This scene is the climax of the show to me. Even though traditionally it would be that scene with the advertising guy, with the Lucky Strike. This is a moment where this woman sort of calls him on everything. He's making an excuse here for his comments. I'm not really like that. And she won't buy it. Doesn't matter. Was it his sexism or his anti-Semitism? She obviously is interested in him. And it's a business meeting that becomes sexual, but he puts her on point because he doesn't get it. Why aren't you married? It's nice too because it's not a response to a threat in a weird way. I mean, it's just threatening. That's how a man feels. This man feels about her position. But Don is also curious, and that's part of his character. It's just like when he was talking to the busboy at the beginning. But he's a know-it-all. In his confidence, he thinks he's unraveling her. And she does actually reveal something here, which he treats like a joke. I love what John does here. He looks amazing too. Everything about this shot is just, if you want to know who this man is, this very cynical view of it. I wanted him to express his existential philosophy. I don't mean it in a brainy way. I mean literally just a man who doesn't believe in any of these things. And it's such a strong posture to have, you know. But the interesting thing is, and what the scene was about is, he throws this macho mid-century attitude out there. And she just says, that's baloney. She says, you're scared. I know what it's like to be alienated and disconnected. She knows it because she's a woman, and she knows because she's Jewish. I don't know what it is you really believe in. It's just so pointed. And there was a reaction written in the script that Don sips his drink and looks, he doesn't know what to say. And that display of that moment of weakness, and it's one of many in the pilot now that I'm watching it, is really what draws you into this man and makes you not think he's just some, see this? He doesn't know what to do. I don't know if that's true. He lies. What, he's just have another drink. That disarming of him, it keeps him from being just some Barbie doll or macho character. I love the way she offers herself to him. This is the manners of the day, her rap. And of course, story-wise, the potential that they will see each other again. She really talks to him. No one talks to him like that the whole show. Now, where are we? We see Pete. We see he's drunk. Vincent's wonderful in this. They're both are. And I was joking with Phil Abraham after I saw the lighting. I said, Edward Hopper's going to see this and sue you. It's just so lonely. The hallway. It's right outside Midge's apartment, actually. It's the same building we shot on the same day. We had very little time. And these two have worked together. They're both former child actors. And they just have this great sort of honesty. And honesty, I mean, they're both putting on fronts of how they're supposed to behave. And she got it right away that this man had come all the way out to see her, and then it was hot. But he is a creep. And his self-pity is almost endearing. And there's a moment in the script here, which I wrote in, of him talking to the top of her head. And it just said everything. They didn't have to make eye contact, and he could say whatever he wanted. And it was very intimate, too intimate for people who did not know each other. In fact, that stumble at the beginning of the scene that Vincent does. This wide shot is so beautiful, it was tempting to play the whole scene in it, but I just wanted to be in there, and I wanted to see her face, and I wanted you to be shocked when she let him in. These people didn't have sex back then. Unmarried people? Of course they did. She's so innocent, and why is she doing it? And look at her. She won't take her eyes off him. This is a $4,000 solution to a $100,000 problem. We could not get a train. It was in the script. We have a piece of plexiglass, a Hudson sprayer, and a woman walking down who stumbles a little bit. That is the way we do things. And here is this amazing, this is just outside of New York City. This train station. We paid for everything here. The rain, Bob Shaw dressed it up, the vintage cars. It didn't take that much, and it's not on screen that long, but it says everything. David Carbonara actually found this version of Caravan, and I love it because it's so mysterious. And where is Don going? What is he doing? It's traveling music, but it's portentous a little bit. This was very important that the house have a red door. And where is Don going? This shot became iconic for the show. This is, Alan loved the idea of not seeing his face there. And of course, we have a reveal here. This beautiful woman who's been waiting for him at least 2 days. And he belongs with her. She's his wife. She has a ring on, and she's playful. And I think there's a moment here now where we're shocked and hating him. And also thinking, like, this man's about to have sex with her too? What does he eat? This is like 4 women in 24 hours. No, but there's a total moment of, we know it's this colonial house, and this is all in the script, this walk up the stairs, more distraction, more curiosity. And then there was a discussion about this last scene. I love this shot. If you watch it again, you'll see it goes from Don. Bill Coleman, the operator, just pulled this off. Then the first child's in focus, and the second child is in focus, and then it comes up back up to Don, turning, and then we cut to Betty there in the hallway, lit perfectly, smiling at him. And Alan originally thought this was too religious. I don't know if he talked about this, but I did it for him, and that happens to be his little girl in the bed there, and he got very emotional and said, yeah, we should do this. It's not meant to be religious. It's meant to be a statement of inner complexity for this man, not just ignorance or hypocrisy. And this song, thank Alex Pisavas for clearing it. I found this song. It's from My Fair Lady, which is mentioned in the show, and it's just the perfect tone. It's happy, and it also thematically just says, this house is one of many. It could be your house. Making this pilot was a unique experience because it was a realization of a dream that I'd had for a long time. And when I finished it, for the first time in my life, I realized that it was about the work. And no matter what happened to the show, I was actually rewarded by the process of making it.